Alright, we got the questions in, and now it's time for the answers. Why waste our time with some sort of big intro apart from the typical thank you and thanks for subscribing? We can get straight to the answers now. First up, from 6716. Do you do other things to mentally prepare yourself for your podcasts, such as drinking some refreshments or playing a paddleball? Well, every once in a while I drink some water so I can remain hydrated. And every time I take a break, I usually get up and stretch a bit, because sitting on your ass all day on a computer chair is not pleasant in any way, shape, or form. Especially for a long duration, if you ask me. Sometimes this happens whenever we go, way past 3 hours in the past. But I think nowadays, with the fact that everyone else has been pretty busy, I think shorter episodes do help with reducing any cramps that build up over time. Yeah, we also have me at least be with Lucas and give him some love and attention because he's a good boy. Next up, from Freddy. What do you think about this massive delay of the DC movies? I really wanted to watch The Flash this year. And what are your expectations for the new Transformers movie? Well, regarding all the DC movies being delayed, I think it has to do with just Warner Brothers being Warner Brothers. They don't really know what they're doing with DC these days. They're trying to appeal to different sorts of audiences that are still going to complain about this stuff. They could easily just, appeal to the Snyderverse fans and the people that don't like Snyder stuff but do want some DC media. But instead, they're just going back and forth. But more so, they're just making all these slates and announcements and barely even contributing towards them. I mean, just now we're getting to, Batgirl? The pandemic stuff, I think the pandemic is no longer a concern because we're way past COVID. We're not in the early days of it anymore. Everyone's, mostly been vaccinated, and the restrictions have been lifted of late. So the fact that they're actually making COVID an excuse if that's the case wouldn't make any sense. But as for things such as the management, I think it has to do with Discovery, handling things themselves. They might rewrite some stuff to make it a little more canon to certain details. Because I know for a fact a lot of the movies that were made after Justice, the theatrical cut of the Snyder Cut, are not going to be compatible with the Snyderverse. Which is why I'm guessing the fact that they want to put attention to the Snyderverse equally to what's also been made for the DCEU, or as I like to call it, the Hamadaverse. And I know you're excited to watch The Flash, but I'm not. The fact that it's, I know it's already going to be separate from Snyderverse now, but it still feels pretty spiteful. The fact that they're doing all these things, it could have been great to see, bringing back Thomas Wayne for Flashpoint Batman, but instead bringing back Michael Keaton, who people say is perfect to bring back, even though he's way older than Ben Affleck, who they call too old to play Batman. It's just for a goddamn thankless, if you ask me. As for the new Transformers movie, Rise of the Beasts, well, I expect it to not really be in a specific continuity with the live-action movies, but at least be a better movie than Bumblebee. I know it's not going to be Dark of the Moon levels of God tier. Seriously, Dark of the Moon's the best Transformers movie. Sorry, 86 fans. The thing about Rise of the Beast is the fact that at least you get a sense of creativity this time around. I have not seen any huge creativity with the Bumblebee movie. It's usually just them trying to appeal to the G1ers that eternally bitched about them and still do to this day. Especially after, even after Bumblebee, they still complain about all the stuff that he did. And I think it's funny how people even forgot Bumblebee existed. But apart from all that nonsense, I at least like the ideas that we're getting from Rise of the Beasts. I like the fact that we're having a different cast for the Autobots. We're having the Terracons this time around. I'm not sure if any of the normal Decepticons will show up. I assume we won't, but you never know. And I do think that it's great that we're getting ourselves Maximals and Predacons to make things a little more interesting because, I was kind of expecting this to be sort of a live-action G1 series and trying to appeal to the purists. I also like the fact that we're filming in a very new setting this time around. The fact that we're pretty much in South America as one of the main locations is pretty cool if you ask me. And I do look forward to seeing some of the ancient scenery, especially with the likes of Machu Picchu, which I was happy to find out that Stephen Capel Jr. was hanging out with Michael Bay. They make the perfect pair if you ask me. Way better than the Yes Man Travis Knight. Now from Super Antonio Bro, will you start to make individual videos for topic discussions? For example, an individual video about your hopes and advice for what can happen in Sonic Frontiers? Tell you the truth, this has already been done for a good while. You should have seen the rest of my channel where I talked about things like the Snyderverse animated stuff, as well as me going into things like, TCAP. And every once in a while in the podcast, I'd cover certain details that are mostly individual topics, like the Wolverine trilogy, single movie reviews like Army of the Dead, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. And every once in a while, I try and do that with other stuff that really isn't fitting for a podcast video. This has been done before. And Sonic Frontiers, I'd save that for a podcast episode. You never know, though, but just keep an eye out for things like that, and always go back for some sort of details like that regarding individual episode topics. Now from Usagi's Invades Web, who is funny enough using a picture of Jupiter, aka Lita, aka Mako. What was the first cartoon and anime that you watched? Well, the first cartoon I've seen probably has to either be from Nickelodeon, or Disney, or PBS Kids. Like, it's hard to tell because I've seen so many things all at once. Like, I've seen something related to Mickey Mouse, at the same time I've seen something related to SpongeBob, and at the same time something related to PBS Kids, like maybe something like Caillou or whatever. Maybe it's just the fact that like so many of the characters wore the color yellow that were the ones I normally associated with as my first ever cartoons. Maybe it's Tweety. I probably saw a Tweety show before I even saw anything regarding Looney Tunes proper. I don't know, just the fact that I grew up with a lot of characters that were yellow when I was younger, before I got into red, before delving into characters of different colors as my favorites, is just kind of hilarious if you ask me. Just a title of detail all around. And my first anime was Pokemon. Or was it Digimon? I remember watching Digimon, like, after an episode of Dino Thunder. I just thought it was kind of, like, strange, but kind of cool at the same time. Either way, though, yeah, the fact that if it was Pokemon, then, like, the fact that I grew up with the Pikachu plush I still own to this day, kind of shows that I did grow up with yellow characters before I started to have a thing for red characters, before I thought, you know, any character that's associated with any color is awesome. So, there's that. Next up from Snake CQC. What's better, Halo or Doom? What's the best game of the franchise that you chose? Well, to tell you the truth, I do think that either one is good in their own way. I think Halo is best for, you know, more characters, more story, whereas Doom is best if you're interested in, like, the simpler approach that we get with Doom Guy. You know, he's going against all the demons because they killed his rabbit Daisy. It's, like, either one of them is good. I just think that, like, if you have a different taste, then you're going to be happy with either one. Plus, we also get ourselves, like, two awesome guys in green, Doom Guy and Master Chief. And as for the best game that we get from each series, you know, I think Doom Eternal is pretty awesome, although I know some people hate the fact that it was more story-driven, so I think the original games work pretty well. And as for Halo, I do think that Halo 3 is just a masterpiece all around, you know, best way for us to get into the series after the cliffhanger that we got from Halo 2. I was about to say Infinite would be great all around, but I know for a fact that apart from the campaign and the initial excitement of the multiplayer mode, the after-game stuff is just pretty meh all around. So yeah, like, I'm not one of the people that complains about, like, 343 Industries being shit at times, but I will say that it's kind of disappointing if you ask me. Oh, and as for the Halo TV series, wait for my full thoughts on that once the first season ends. From Tobias, what would be the most utopian life for yourself? Like the one in your dreams? I think it'd be one that's full of aesthetics and vaporwave stuff. So one idea would be for everything to be unified, you know, peaceful and just. No moral issues, no corrupt politicians, no sort of stupid cloud chasers. Everything is peaceful, everything is unified. And even though technology is used, it doesn't feel like it's going to fuck up the environment, which, you know, funny enough, I had some dreams where stuff like that was sort of a thing. There's like this very technologically advanced hotel, people that were pretty much very drone-like, very NPC-ish with how they spoke, and it was sort of like their own bubble because the outside world that the hotel was set in was not very, how do I put this? Not in the best shape. But yeah, that's sort of like the dystopian life I have in mind. But, you know, I think my dreams just consist of like random crossovers, me interacting with fictional characters, me in weird situations at work, or basically weird-ass malls, you know, the kinds that are very much inspired by the sort of like vaporwave stuff, and any like those like fictional pools where it's all sort of endless and very creepy feeling, if you ask me. Next up from Morgan Scott, what's your most anticipated game of 2022? Honestly, it's kind of hard to choose because I kind of feel that a lot of games have been very, very, very linear in terms of how they want to approach themselves. The IPs that I do like are very sparse these days. And I know there's a lot of people that are obsessed with things like Elden Ring, but I honestly don't have the interest for that game as much as what's been more familiar with. Although I wouldn't mind trying it out one day, I guess. LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga is certainly one of them, just because of my huge attachment to the Star Wars series back then. On top of me wanting a more unique and more well-versed LEGO game that doesn't feel as repetitive as it's been for nearly 20 years. You know, it's been 5 years since we got ourselves like a proper, full, big main title Sonic game since Forces. And after that, we were pretty silent, on top of the fact that people are still obsessed with Mania. And it looks like we're going to get another rinse and repeat story where people are shitting on Frontiers. Now that we got Sonic Origins, the same way we got Mania, and people were pretty much shitting on Forces. At this point, it kind of feels like either it's a case, okay, genuine stuff, I can see why you'd like one or the other, or at this point, it's more of a case of just trying to go for clout. You know, at least like try and change things up a bit with why you like one over the other. But yeah, my interest in games is pretty sparse of late. I will say though that I'm kind of interested in seeing what we'll get from Insomniac in the near future. On top of that, Pac-Man Museum Plus is pretty interesting, even though I would much prefer to see them do remasters of the World Trilogy, as well as games like Miss Madness, and if they were really brave, at least give us World Rally and Pac-Man Adventures in Time. But I highly doubt it because Bamco's a coward these days. I mean, they fucking redesigned Miss Pac-Man and replaced her with Pac-Mom, who's pretty much like a renamed wife of Pac-Master, but I guess it's supposed to be a younger version of Professor Pac from Pac-World. Ah boy. Ad Games and Bamco are fucking idiots, I swear to God. And finally, from Colton. What are your top 25 movies, and explain why you love the movie and why it is where it's at on your ranking. Alright then, challenge accepted. Toy Story 3, a fantastic initial conclusion to the series that showed an important moral in how no one can ever solve the passage of time. Batman v Superman transcends as a graphic novel movie with an outstanding cast, a complex and organic story, and experiences that get better with each rewatch. Shrek 2, a high-quality sequel that improves on the original with the right amount of world building and character development. Transformers Dark of the Moon. Best Transformers movie, best story, best characters, it destroys the Bumblebee movie, surpasses 2007, and 1986 and get the fuck out. Sorry, G1ers. Uncut Gems, finally a good Adam Sandler-led movie that is not the same damn thing as we saw before. Spider-Man 2, peak Spider-Man storytelling, and the best we've ever gotten for both the Raimi trilogy and Spider-Man movies in general. Jurassic Park, dinosaurs are awesome, this movie holds up well. Also shows why we should leave extinct species alone. Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, the best story for the entire saga, and it also knows how to end its own story while beginning a new one without being as cringe as Rogue One with its fanservice obsession. Gung Ho, a great way to compare the differences between American workforces and their Japanese counterparts in the automotive industry. Elf, a modern classic Christmas movie with a great cast and a pretty original story that combines holiday magic with contrasting vibes of New York City. RoboCop, a perfect satire on privatization and public greed with a large amount of violence, and hey, I somehow saw glimpses of this as a kid back then. Terminator, I know T2 is more exciting, but I like the horror vibe of this movie with the cold presence of the Terminator. Temple of Doom, best Indiana Jones movie in my opinion. Pretty good prequel to an already great first movie without being too contradictory. Back to the Future. Marty McFly is a character you gotta root for while he tries his best to keep things intact for the future. Schindler's List, a fantastic story depicting an industrialist who treated his own Jewish refugees with much better care in his factory than any Nazi did during the Holocaust. 300, a very dynamic movie that not only got its own back when it first released onto DVD, but left me pleasantly surprised with the fact that it was based on a graphic novel without being seen as such at first glance. Ice Age, the best movie of the series and one that gave a remarkable amount of footing for Blue Sky Studios back in the good old days. Trading Places, this movie represents the test where a rich man and a street hustler switch lives in a way that is both comedic and important to learn from. Aladdin, my favorite classic Disney movie due to its great performances as well as its characters almost fitting well with the tone of the Disney movie style compared to other movies, which is a pretty big hot take if you ask me. Coraline, a great reminder that even when something seems too good to be true, it might be best to value what you already have while being willing to stand by it. Curse of the Were-Rabbit, best stop-motion animated movie from the best OVA series of all time, Wallace and Gromit. Upgrade, underrated movie that you may remember best from throwing low-key shade towards Solo, a Star Wars story. Spaceballs, best Star Wars parody ever made, and I doubt any sequel will nail the type of humor this movie has considering the current climate of comedians in their quotations. Pursuit of Happiness, my favorite Will Smith movie and a touching story that shows the commitment that the father and son duo share and staying together even if they nearly lost everything. And finally, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Ferris Bueller, enough said. And that about does it for this Q&A. It may seem fairly small, but I'm more than willing to continue more of these at some point in the future. But with all that said, I want to thank you guys for sticking around with me for so long, and I look forward to getting myself 1,000 subscribers at some point in the near future. But until then, take care.